Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy, and I am here to talk about something completely different. Hopefully I will have come up with a title to this video that will clue people into that. For over a year I was battling cancer with one of my dogs, and in October of 2016 I did a video about the carrot cancer cure. And at that time I said I would do some updates, and then I never did. For one thing, getting the food into that dog became quite a trial, and keeping up with anything else became difficult, and so everything was kind of focused around giving her everything that she needed to do as well as she could. So what that previous video did, and I'll try to remember to put a link to it down in the information box below the video, but I just kind of re-watched it. And so Jessie, in short, my dog Jessie was fairly well along. She had already had the cancer removed once. It was cancer of the jaw. And she'd had it removed once, and it wasn't until it then recurred, and this was a very aggressive form of cancer. And so the doctors weren't really giving me any kind of hope, and chemo was way, way too expensive, all of that kind of stuff. So it had recurred, and then it finally occurred to me to try using carrots, which I had heard about years prior, at a health food store when I was looking actually into something else, and heard a story about how massive amounts of carrots helped or cured. I don't think he had any. I think he decided not to do chemo, some local man. And I didn't, inquire about that person or look into them. It didn't seem very realistic to me that carrots could have an effect on cancer, that people have such, the medical community can't solve this issue, and without kind of killing the very people that it's trying to cure and all of that kind of thing, by which I mean that the chemotherapy is essentially, killing you as well as killing the cancer, even if it doesn't completely kill you. So I didn't give it a lot of credence, but then when my dog was in this situation, and I figured, well, why not? So I had started feeding her, I guess, in late September, mid to late September of 2016. I began feeding her carrots, and that other video talks about the progress that I saw, the receding of the cancer. And one place, excuse me, still a tickly nose. And I don't know if it's probably just allergies. I live in the South, and I don't feel like I'm coming down with a cold, so it's always just allergies. So I started feeding her like a pound of carrots. I would grind it up it was in my blender. I would grind them up, I would feed them to her, and she actually loved it. She just gobbled it right up. She didn't care what it was. It went in her bowl. She was eating it all down. And she had gotten a large, like, between her tongue and her gums, she had gotten a large ball that was causing her tongue to go out the side of her mouth. It would come out, it would not, large dog tongue. She couldn't lick straight out of her mouth because this thing was pushing her tongue in the other direction. So when I was feeding her the carrots, and Meeker red raspberry seed powder, which also sounds crazy, but there is something in raspberry seeds that has been shown medically to impact cancer. That doesn't automatically mean that eating that eating those seeds will result in that. I don't know what quantities you actually need to have in order to impact the cancer, but at any rate, there is a chemical in them that is known to kill cancer cells. So I was feeding her carrots and had just started feeding her the Meeker red raspberry seed powder, and that tumor that was coming up her tongue. It kind of expanded, and then it started to turn black and shrank and went away, and her tongue was back to normal. As I was doing the carrots with her, the places that had become hard from the cancer tissue here became softer, and there was a place where the cancer cells had come up, the cancer tissue had come up and kind of covered her lower teeth, and it also had receded. So I was seeing positive effects from what I was doing, but there were also things like whether or not I added dry kibble or even moisten, in other words, a dry dog food to it would prevent it, or it would resurge if I did that, if I provided that, because supposedly carbohydrates feed the cancer in some way. And all of this, I would hear these things, and then I would just act on whatever I was hearing. And because she had such an observable sort of cancer, as opposed to something in the body, cavity of the body or something, I could see. And because it was a very rapidly progressive, a very aggressive cancer, I could see, sometimes within a matter of a couple of days, I could see the effects of whatever it was I was giving her. And so, I put dry kibble in there because when she was on carrots only, she was losing a lot of weight. She seemed to feel good. She was very vibrant. She was she was less of an old dog, actually, when I was feeding her carrots. She got a lot of her old spunk and vitality back, which was very interesting to me. And when I then tried to introduce the dry food again, in order to keep some weight on her, then she, the cancer began to become more aggressive again. So I ended up looking into ways to get that would encourage her to eat the carrots, because she was still eating the carrots, but at first I was mixing it with wet dog food just to give her some additional flavor. Actually, at first I was just giving her plain old carrots, but then when I was increasing the volume, I think I started to give her more. I started to mix in some of the wet food to make it sort of stewish, and then I became a little bit suspicious even of the food, the canned food, and the chicken and the beef, and all of the crap they put in our chicken and our beef. And so I eliminated that, and instead I would give her chicken soup or broth, figuring that they might be a little bit more careful with what they give people. And then I learned, and I've got notes here, and I'm coming back to this now because, and I should have said at the beginning, she did pass away, but I feel like, that for the advanced state that she was at, we made some pretty impressive punchbacks at that cancer. We, and it only began to resurge when her appetite failed, so that she was not getting that cancer. So she was not getting the carrots, and that's when things started to go downhill. And I'm sure that her appetite was failing because the cancer had probably metastasized, and or there was something else going on. And at that point, I didn't press it too much. But as we were going, and I was also trying to increase the amount of carrots slowly but surely, because I was seeing such great progress. But I was at a point having an issue with, all right, how do I put weight on her? How do I give her something that puts weight on her and keeps her eating the carrots? Everybody is going to have an eventual, tolerance, limit for eating carrots. And so I was giving her soup, people soup, broth. I would mix it in there. But what I found is the other thing that's good, other than carrots, another orange food, is pumpkin. And dogs love pumpkin. And so toward the end, that was a lot of what I was feeding, was pumpkin, whether it was with carrots or not. I was feeding her lots and lots of pumpkin. And in general, dogs love pumpkin. They like pumpkin. They will eat it. And I'm not talking spiced, ready to pour in the pie shell. I'm talking raw, canned pumpkin. Without any added spices or anything of that kind. And of course, water. Now, so what happened was, things were kind of stable. There was a point at which they were stable, and then, so when I first started with the carrots and the raspberry seed powder, there was a reduction. And then it stabilized essentially. And then, I did some things that were not, that made it come back a little bit, and then I took those things away and it went down a little bit, but not as far as it had been, so we were in active battle here. And this was in, kind of it was a situation where the likelihood of absolute success was slim. But I felt like the efforts I was making had a significant impact and probably kept her alive about 6 months longer than she would have, and probably kept her much more comfortable than she would have been had that stuff just sort of taken over of its own accord without any attempt to battle it. If tomorrow I was told that I had cancer, I would eat carrots, and Meeker red raspberry seed powder. I would go at it as much as I could possibly stand. I would be putting in whatever form. Pumpkin to some extent, because that is another form, and I don't know if it's the beta carotene that's making the difference. I don't know what exactly it is. The other thing that I discovered a little bit too late is that it isn't just eating carrots. Like, I was giving Jessie ground carrots. I was grinding them up in my blender. And it's supposed to be juiced carrots. So you're supposed to be juicing all of these carrots. And I think that was the thing that was really difficult for me to get down her, was just carrot juice was not very appealing. And so I would put carrot juice in with pumpkin, and I would put it in with soup, and I would do all these different things. Because I finally got a juicer when I realized that. And I think that also was at a point where her appetite was beginning to diminish a little bit. Not critically, but a little. And so, again, if tomorrow I was diagnosed with cancer, I would be eating carrots, I would be juicing carrots, I would be taking that red raspberry seed powder, and I might be taking other traditional medical interventions as well, but I would also do those things just because of what I saw what they did for Jessie. I'm just looking here at my notes, because I made these notes kind of as I was going along. And again, I was so involved in her care that there's just no way I was going to make another video. And then there was a point at which it was clear, with her appetite going downhill, it was just really clear that I just needed to, it was coddling time. It was time to, give her the pumpkin, give her whatever tasted good so that she would eat, whatever was reasonably healthy for her and would not slide her down any faster than she needed to be. And then there was just a moment when I could just see that she was not feeling well. I knew that it had metastasized because my vet would always feel to whether it had gone to the lymph nodes. And so I would on occasion feel her lymph nodes, and there was nothing, and then there was something. She had a knot here, she had a knot here, so she had them on both sides. And it was not long after that, I don't know, maybe a month after that, that it was clear that I needed to put her down. So, and I did feel that, you know, I had done everything that I could at that point, and it was the right time. It just really did feel like the right time. But I just wanted to let people know, and there are things, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that I did not try, but are out there. Things that I might try on myself that I wasn't willing to try on my dog, because your dog can't tell you how nasty something is, whether something is going, you know, and you also can't get your dog to cooperate in unpleasant things by explaining how it's good for them. So a couple of them. Bloodroot is supposed to be helpful. I can't remember now whether it is supposed to kill the cancer cells actually, or exactly how it's supposed to help. One of the problems with, like, another thing that's supposed to be very helpful is curcumin. But, you know, curcumin can be a little on the caustic side in your stomach. And so some of the questions that arise is how do you get these things to absorb into the system? Or what I had wanted to do for Jessie was to somehow put them on the cancer or on the gum and get them to stick and stay, as opposed to her swallowing them, and which I never figured out. You know, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a pharmacological inventor. You know, I don't know what the substrates are. You know, I don't know. But that's bloodroot is one. I've already mentioned pumpkin, red raspberry seed powder. Carrots. I think there were some other things. Some of my notes here are about ways to make things easier going down or to deal with her nausea. Licorice and slippery elm are possibilities. I didn't know you can't use slippery elm tablets, but if you have a slippery elm tea, you can actually, and I use slippery elm tablets for my own when I have an upset stomach for some reason, or licorice tablets or something like that. But you're not supposed to use the tablet form for pets or dogs. And again, I would recommend anybody get online, research these things. Don't take my word for it. You know, this is just from my research. But if you brew some slippery elm and they will drink it, that would help them. Licorice, which is sometimes compared to slippery elm or is considered another thing that kind of helps your stomach, is not supposed to be given in a prolonged fashion to dogs, maybe not even to people, because they would need some kind of potassium supplement to go with it. I had a note here to put curcumin and aloe. There was one, and this was interesting, and again, I'm not sure how I could have done this with a dog, where people, and I think this was like in Mexico or something, they use a cabbage poultice, that a cabbage poultice would somehow reduce cancer tumors. Another suggestion that my dog didn't really take to for putting weight on the dog was cottage cheese, or just cheese in general. Again, I can see in my notes here that I was looking for all kinds of ways to somehow get, you know, if something is on a dog, they want to lick it off, or they want to get it off, or it'll, you know, she would rub her something on her leg, her chin on her legs, and then she'd lick it off. So I was looking for all kinds of things. What else do I have here? I think I'm almost out of stuff. Do have to be careful about meats. But I think I've given you the main things that were helpful. And again, even though cauliflower, okay. Alright, there's something in cauliflower called sulforaphane, and apparently there are pills available. Sulforaphane, S-U-L-F-U-R-A-P-H-A-N-E. What I'll do is I will put some of this stuff down in the information box below the video. And I even have here on the bloodroot, you know, for the dog, it was like, it's too dangerous, it's too risky. I couldn't get feedback from her about what she was experiencing while she was taking it. And it's, the bloodroot comes in an extract or a powder, and the ingredient in that is supposed to kill cancer cells is sanguinarine. And again, I'll put it in the information box below the video. So I have this bloodroot, and I was just too afraid. I bought it, but I was too afraid to use it. But there's another thing somewhere that has been tried on dogs and has had some scary consequences. And so it took somebody with more nerve, and I could see if it was a young dog, how you might be willing to try it. But it's something where the veterinarians, I think, have not, at least while I was researching this, were not wanting to maybe admit the risks, or they didn't have a way to ameliorate the problems that result from this other thing. Let me see if I can find it. Where did it go? There was a, I've got a bunch of alternative vets, and I never did take her to an alternative vet. Neoplacine, N-E-O-P-L-A-S-E-N-E, neoplacine, that is administered to dogs. A vet administers this to the dog, and in some cases the tumors go away. In other places, or in other cases, it may kill the cancer, but it puts the dogs in extreme pain that can't be ameliorated. And that, I was not willing to take that risk. Just like with the bloodroot, I was not willing to take that risk. And so you would have to look, and you can look any of these things up. I didn't pull any of this out of the blue. It was internet research that brought this up. So if you look up this stuff, you'll find resources online talking about them and the pros and cons. With Jessie, I used the things that really didn't have cons. I was looking for things that didn't have cons. Carrots, curcumin a little bit, because of the, you know, it can irritate your stomach, especially if you're taking it in large quantities. And then the Meeker red raspberry seed powder, which is, you know, it's not going to cause any problems. So, and they, you know, they had good effects. They did not prevent the cancer ultimately from taking her, but part of the reason for that was because she stopped eating the carrots. She wasn't interested in eating the carrots or the carrot juice, and that gave the cancer free license, and it took over, and that was the end. But, you know, if you're a human being, then you have more options for going against your natural inclinations. And another dog might eat the carrots the whole time. Another thing in my situation was that I didn't try these things until the cancer had recurred and was becoming fairly advanced. Then I remembered that there was this at least one other option that I could look into. And I really feel very strongly that if after the first surgery that she had, a year prior to even the first video that I made, that if after that surgery that removed the cancer that was there initially, if I had started her on carrots and or the red raspberry seed powder at that point, that she would have continued to live, and it would not have come back, because it actually didn't come back for I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe 5 months after that initial surgery, that it started to reappear again. So I think if I had given her body that extra support, that in terms, and again, it's like it kills it. So, you know, I'll say this, that extra cleansing power, that extra cleansing power to get rid of the cancer cells wherever they were hiding out, I think that I would not have had to go through this second treatment, and because I did eventually have it removed again. Not the surgery. The vet had wanted to take off her lower jaw. I wasn't willing to put her through that. But he did at one point again remove some of the growth that had come on. But anyway, there you go. I really think it is worth looking into. And if tomorrow I'm keeping these notes, I'll probably put them in the computer somewhere. And if I were to ever have cancer, I would be doing quite a bit of this stuff, even more than I did for Jessie, because again, I can assess the risks and the effects it's having on my body, whereas, you know, I'm not living in my dog's body and she can't communicate with me, so there were some risks I wasn't willing to take. But anyway, feel free to share this video. You know, so many people out there do struggle with cancer at some point. Why not tell them about carrots and red raspberry seed powder? There's nothing that can really bad that can come from those two things particularly, and they really are quite powerful. So do spread the word. All right, everybody. That's why I'm making the whole video. It's no pity party. It's about spread the word. I saw it. I could see it. I could see it. It was not, you know, it was right there in front of me. That's part of the reason that I went through this, is I could see the actual effects practically on a day-to-day and certainly on a week-by-week basis. I could see the effects of the actions I was taking with her diet. So it was working. It was working. It was just too late. That's all there was to it. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.